All right, let's jump right in. Today we're digging into one of the greatest stories ever told, the story of life on Earth. Specifically, the story of the tetrapods. It's an epic saga that kicks off in ancient oceans millions and millions of years ago. And believe it or not, it leads directly to the birds outside your window, the dog on your couch, and, well, you.
So let's start with a puzzle. A whale, a snake, a penguin, and you. I mean, what on earth could possibly connect these four? One lives its whole life in the ocean, one slithers on the ground, one flies, sort of, and one is, listening to this right now. The thing is, the answer is the key to this entire story. It's a family connection, and it goes way, way deeper than you'd probably guess.
To get to that answer, we've got to travel back in time. And I mean way back, hundreds of millions of years. We're going to a world that would look totally alien to us now, a world where one of the greatest adventures in the history of life was just about to kick off, the very first wobbly steps onto dry land. And here it is, the big connection. They're all tetrapods. Now, that comes from the Greek for four-footed, which might seem a little confusing. I mean, a snake has no feet, right? But here's the crucial part. It's not about how many limbs an animal has now. It's all about its family tree. A snake is a tetrapod because its distant ancestors had four legs. Same for whales. That shared blueprint is still there, hidden deep in their DNA.
Now, this great leap wasn't some weekend project. This was a slow burn, a transition that took tens of millions of years. It all started around 400 million years ago with these guys, called lobe-finned fishes. Unlike other fish, they had these weird, fleshy fins with actual bones inside them, a blueprint for our own arms and legs. Fast forward to 370 million years ago, and we find incredible fossils like Ichthyostoga. This creature was the perfect mashup, part fish, part amphibian, with limbs it could use to haul itself through the shallows. It's the fossil record beautifully showing us how it all went down.
Okay, but this brings up a huge question, right? Life was pretty good in the water. There was food, you didn't have to worry about gravity. So why on earth would you bother to leave? Was it some desperate escape, like the ponds were all drying up? Well, the evidence actually points to a totally different story.
It turns out it was less about being forced out and more about, well, opportunity knocking. The land, or at least the swampy edges of it, was like an untouched buffet, full of early insects and plants. It was also a great place to hide from the massive killer fish that own the deep water. And in those murky, swampy shallows, having sturdy limbs to push off the bottom give you a real edge. So get this, legs probably didn't evolve to leave the water, but to be better at living in it.
But you can't just, decide to walk out of the ocean one day. You need a whole new toolkit to survive on land. Lungs obviously were a must, but the real monster was gravity. Without water holding you up, you needed a much stronger skeleton just to avoid pancaking. Your whole circulatory system needed a massive overhaul to pump blood upwards. It wasn't just about growing legs, it was a total biological re-engineering from the inside out. And once they had that toolkit, once they were truly established on land, tetrapods didn't just survive. Man, they absolutely exploded in diversity. This explosion gave rise to the four great families, the four major classes of tetrapods that basically run the world today. And each of these four families came up with its own game-changing innovation. Amphibians mastered metamorphosis, letting them live a double life. Then came the reptiles, and they cracked the code, the amniotic egg. Think of it like a personal, private pond for your baby, which meant they could finally cut the cord to the water and reproduce anywhere. From them, mammals developed warm-bloodedness and live birth, a high-energy, go-anywhere strategy. And finally, birds took that same warm-blooded engine, added feathers, and achieved powered flight, conquering the last frontier, the sky. Okay, so that's the big picture, the 360 million year epic. But this ancient story, it isn't just locked away in some museum. It is alive and kicking right now, all around us. To really see what I mean, let's zoom in on one tiny corner of the planet, the Sid Valley in Devon, England, and see how these four ancient families are doing today. Let's start with the mammals. This is such a cool insight about badgers.
They don't just live in their environment, they're actively building it. Their ancient, well-worn paths literally become highways for foxes, rabbits, and deer. It's a perfect example of how one animal's daily commute can build the infrastructure for the entire neighborhood.
All right, for our reptiles, let's talk about the adder, Britain's only venomous snake. And here's a neat little trick to tell the difference between the guys and the girls. The males are usually the striking gray or cream color with a really bold black zigzag down their back. The females, on the other hand, tend to be brown or reddish, and they're usually a bit bigger. A great little detail to look out for if you're ever lucky enough to see one. Okay, representing the amphibians, we have maybe one of the weirdest, wildest bits of nature trivia you will ever hear. If you're walking in the countryside and you find this weird, gelatinous blob on the ground, you may have found star jelly. And the story behind it is insane. A predator, like a heron, sweeps down and eats a female frog. But the frog's unfertilized egg jelly is indigestible, so it swells up inside the predator's stomach until it has to just spit the whole gooey mess back out. It's not from space, people. It's from a frog via a predator's stomach. How crazy is that?
And what about the birds? Well, if you see a flash of electric blue zipping along the River Sid, that's a kingfisher. But it's so much more than just a pretty bird. The kingfisher is what we call a bioindicator. It's like a living, breathing report card for the river. They need crystal clear water with tons of little fish to survive. So if the kingfishers are around, it means the river is healthy. It's that simple.
So you see, from badger highways to river report cards, these local stories show just how woven together everything is. But they also show how easily those threads can be pulled apart. These ancient families, these survivors, are now facing a whole new set of challenges that they never evolved to handle. And the threats facing this ancient legacy, they're serious, and they're pretty much all driven by us. Habitat loss from new buildings cuts those badger highways in half. Pollution poisons the clean water those kingfishers depend on. Invasive species like the American mink that's a problem in the Sid Valley can wipe out native wildlife. And hanging over all of it is climate change, messing with the ancient rhythms of breeding and migration. And that leaves us with this final big thought. We've just traced this incredible 360 million year journey from a fin to a foot, and we've seen how these amazing survivors adapted into the wildlife we see today. Seeing their story play out in just one small valley really brings up a massive question for us. As the most dominant tetrapod on the planet by a long shot, what is our responsibility in writing the next chapter of their story?